Hi there, it's Miss Jones again from Sew with Miss Jones. In our last lesson, we pinned all of the pattern pieces on your woven fabric and your felt. Let's get all of your fabric pieces with the pattern still attached and your fabric scissors. If you have a small pair with sharp tips, get those too. Before we start cutting, let's do one more check to make sure that all of the pins are inside the cutting line and none of your pieces are hanging off the edge. Make sure that you have spaced them so that you have enough space to cut out the number of copies that you need. Remember, I have to have 6 pepperoni. You may need 2 eyes or 2 ears or whatever. Before we start cutting, let's take a look at your guide sheet. And I've circled the thing for cutting in red so that I remember where it is. It says to use sharp scissors, cut along the dark lines, solid lines, with long, even strokes. If you go little choppy strokes, you end up looking like you chewed it with your teeth. Cut the curved areas with short strokes, cut outward around the shape of each notch. So we're going to go out and around the notch. And then just make sure that you cut enough pieces for each piece that you need for your pattern. See how I'm holding the scissors? The thumb goes in the smaller hole and your last 3 fingers go in the bigger hole. I keep my pointer out to help me guide the scissors as I use them. Because I am right-handed, I'm going to be cutting in a counterclockwise motion. This way I can see the line as I am cutting. If you're left-handed, you're going to be cutting clockwise. That will allow you to see the line. I'm going to start with the woven fabric. I'm going to carefully cut around the pizza slice, cutting right next to the line. I'm going to try not to cut the cutting line off, but right next to it. Work slowly and move in a counterclockwise motion if you're right-handed and a clockwise motion if you are left-handed. When you get to the notches, those diamond-shaped pattern symbols, don't cut them off. These will be important for matching when you put the things together. Try to keep your fabric as flat as possible. If you notice, I'm keeping my non-dominant hand on top of the fabric to keep it flat. And I'm having a terrible time here. What's the problem? Okay, I'm going to turn this now. Again, try to keep it as flat as possible. And I want to cut in towards that, but I don't want to cut past the line. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put my scissors so that the tip is not past the line. And I'm going to cut that little notch, just like that. Okay? You don't, on these triple ones or the double ones, you don't have to go in and out like they look like teeth. Just cut straight across the line. We will then know that that is the triple notch. Again, just the tips. Don't try to do this because you'll end up cutting into your pillow. So just with the tip, and then continue cutting along. Oh, did I miss it? I sure did. And then get your scissors in there and continue cutting along that line. So the cheese is shaped pretty much like the back of the body of the pillow, and so I'm not going to show you all of this cutting out. Something that you need to know is these edges right here are going to be included in the seam when you put the pillow together. This one is not, and so you want to make sure that as you cut that, you do a really good job, because you don't want any kind of, you know, choppy lines or squared off cheese. I guess cheese could have a point on it, but I think it looks a little nicer if you have these sort of rounded edges. Now, you may not have a piece this big on your pillow that you're making. I try to always go from the largest to the smallest. And I usually do the woven fabric first, because it gives you some practice trimming, so that you will have a nice smooth edge when you get done. And that's the way that you'll know that you've done a good job, is if you flip it over, it should look smooth on the back. When I cut felt pieces, I try to make sure that I hold my scissors straight ahead and then turn the pieces rather than moving the scissors in a circle. I also try to use the tips of the scissors when there are little fiddly bits on the pattern. Sorry, got to put reading glasses on. Just makes it a little easier to see. Now, if you notice, I told you to keep it all flat when you were doing the woven fabric, and you need to do that so it doesn't wiggle around too much. But if you notice here, my hand is really controlling those layers and keeping them together so that I get this as round as possible. And again, if you look at the back, it should be pretty smooth. If it's not perfectly circular, I don't know. Is pepperoni ever perfectly circular? When you're doing, if you have a mushroom or anything that's got an inner point, you need to just use the tips of your scissors to get in there. And then you may have to do a little wiggling around to get this edge over here. Okay, and then just follow the line all the way around. Whenever you have an in thing, just use the tips of your scissors. You never want your scissors to be past the point where you need to stop. Alrighty, and then I'm going to show you how to do the olive, because the olive is smaller than the pin. So I'm going to start out by pushing the pin as far one direction as I can, and then I'm going to take my scissors and I am going to follow along that line as best I can. And again, I'm turning the olive as I'm going. And I'm almost back to that pin, and I don't want to hit it. So what I'm going to do then is I'm going to pull the pin back this direction. So again, it's out of the way of that line, and I'm going to keep going. Alrighty, so these kind of olives have a hole in them. This is not my favorite kind of cutting, but we're going to do the best we can. Before I cut this, I'm actually going to take the pattern off, but I need something to mark this with. And I don't have a chalk pencil at home, but what I thought I might do is just take one of my regular colored pencils and see if that would work. So what I want to do is I'm just going to try and draw the circle, and I'm going around a couple of times. And here's the thing, even if that shows on the front when you cut it out, all you have to do is flip it over and it'll be good on the other side. So I'm going to take the pattern off, and then I'm actually going to cut these one at a time. So before I can cut this one, I'm going to have to put the pattern back on and draw that circle again. Let me see if I can do that real quick. I won't cut them both out, but I'll do that circle. Normally I don't use this on the outside, but since we're going to be cutting this circle and I can flip it over, it's like no big deal. Alright, so you see where that circle is? See that circle? It's tiny and it's not easy to do. So one of the things that you can do is if you fold it in half, and with just the tips of your scissors, and I have some little tiny scissors for this, but you can do this with the bigger scissors. You have to make a little cut. Let me try the bigger ones. Maybe they'll go through it better. Okay? because you have to have a hole so you can get your scissors in there. And then I'm going to take my little scissors. I think they just didn't want to work on the tips. And very small, very, very small pieces. And honestly, you know what? If it sort of looks like an olive, I don't really care. I do like black olives, but if I were making this pillow, I wouldn't put the olives on just because they're kind of a pain. Alrighty, so there's one of them. It's not perfect. I could maybe trim this up just a little bit here so it's not quite so bad. But yeah, basically that looks like an olive, and it can go on my pepperoni pizza. I'm going to finish cutting all this out, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do next. So that's how we cut out the pieces for our projects. Make sure that all of your cutout pieces are put back into your plastic bag so you don't lose any of them. And also, don't throw away any of your bigger scraps, because we're going to use those to practice our hand stitches. Put everything back in your bag for later. And don't forget to put your guide sheet in there too. Next time we get together, we will do the minimal amount of marking that I'm going to have you do. And that will be a very quick lesson. And see you then. Bye for now.